Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I am, as always, your very grateful host. Folks, thank you so much for everything you've done for us lately. I would be remiss if I did not throw out the how grateful I am speech one more time. You folks have really responded since we moved to 5 days. A while ago, you're still checking the boxes and coming out and supporting us. You're sharing, you're liking, everything that has to do with it. I love the DMs that you're sending me. I promise to keep responding to every one of them personally. It does take a minute, and some of you guys are really interesting with your questions. So I want to make sure I'm giving everything their due, and I will get back to everybody, I promise. So if you haven't heard from me yet, just sit tight. You will. I promise. And it's going to be me. We don't have any bots, no AI over here. You guys all know me. So that doesn't work that way. We have a great guest today talking about something that is really cool that I haven't been able to talk about in a long time. And so I can't wait to bring this to you guys. Before we do that, you all know what we have to do. That's right, we got to pay a couple of bills. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Wow, super hot. Just made that. Absolutely beautiful. And you guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. It's an absolutely fantastic cup of joe. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is why we support them the way that we do. You all know how important veterans are to us here at the Power Man. Folks, go check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Let me get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this guy across the table from me. We will be drinking that throughout. I'm getting a little long in the tooth. I got to keep that caffeine flowing. We're not quite to the IV stage yet, but we may be getting there. I don't know. And if we do, it's going to be Freedom Hill running through my veins. Believe me when I tell you that. All right, so let me get this. Let me get this guest on board here today, folks. Father, husband, entrepreneur, ghostwriter. Cannot wait to talk about this. Ghostwriter, Nick Pavlidis. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for that introduction. As you were talking, I just ordered a 5 pound bag of Freedom Hill Coffee Roasters ground coffee breakfast blend.
Love it, love it. You're gonna love it.
Yeah,
You absolutely will love the coffee. I
I'm
promise.
excited.
That's fantastic. Nick, listen, there's people out there right now who probably have heard the word ghostwriter before, but and I know we're going to get to that. But tell us about Nick. Who is Nick Pavlidis? I know you've got quite the story, brother.
Yeah, well, I could tell you a lot about my last 30 or so years. I know you know a little bit about my background, but really my memory starts in 1995, 2 weeks before my 17th birthday. I was in a car accident, a head-on collision. I was not wearing a seatbelt. There was another car coming and crossing over to shortcut a left-hand turn, and they just drifted over and hit head on. And I was dead at the scene of the car accident. No blood pressure, no pulse, lost body functions, had a seizure at the scene, and it was pretty ugly for a while. And as a result of that, I have barely any childhood memories, little snapshots. So when that happened, I became obsessed with just how can I become successful? Even as a young adult, I thought to myself, hey, I want to start this family. Like life is so fragile, so to speak, that this can't be it. If I didn't end up making it after that car accident, what would my impact have been, if anything? And so I ended up I didn't do well in high school, but then I this was my senior year of high school, and I got into college, ended up doing really well in college, and then made it into a really good law school, and was a lawyer for 13 years. And I really enjoyed the intellectual exercise of the practice of law. For the first 10 of those years, I worked in a large law firm in the New York City office. The firm at the time had 300 lawyers. Now it's 800 lawyers or something. They've merged a few times. Had a nice corner office overlooking Central Park. Never lost a case. Big fancy law career. Um, but I had a young family at the time, and my in 2013, my wife and I had an argument, and I really just miserable. I liked the intellectual part of it, but I didn't control my hours. I worked way too much. I had two young kids, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, give or take a few months. And and we had this argument because I wanted to start a side hustle and hopefully get out of the practice of law. But my wife was like, listen, you're working so long. How can you take time to do a side hustle on top of it? We're never going to see you. And of course, I either lost or won the fight and ended up at this business conference trying to learn how to become a coach. Um, when I got into that conference, I met this mentor of mine. He was a mentor for the next 11 years or so, and an older gentleman passed away in early 2024. And the way he and his wife just engaged with each other at this conference, he was leading the conference. It made me realize that I wasn't there to learn how to become a coach. I was there to learn how to become a better husband and a better father. And so I flew back to New York City after the conference, and my wife had been bugging me for 9 years to quit my job in New York and move to Massachusetts, where all our family is from. And so, believe it or not, the short story is I quit my job 6 days later, negotiated a transition period, found a temporary job, and searched for the next iteration. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? We ended up moving home to Massachusetts, and I stumbled across ghostwriting about a year and a half later, and was found my first ghostwriting client in 2015. And less than 8 months later, I was able to quit that transition law job, and I've been serving my family as a ghostwriter ever since for nearly a decade now.
Wow. I mean, there's so much there. You started off with basically I was dead and kept on moving. What a story to come back from. First of all, that's amazing that don't have any memories before that and you start your life at that point. I don't even know how somebody moves forward from that. That's got to be unsettling.
There's one of those the phrase ignorance is bliss, so to speak. There was really two options. I could sit there and think, try to figure out how to get my memories back, but I was pretty happy without any childhood memories. I have some friends and clients who are pretty into biohacking and they're convinced they can get my memories back, but I'm happy. So why chance it, right? Like,
Right. Wow.
like remember some trauma back there. And so for me, it was just, hey, I'm just going to be happy. I'm going to fill up my brain. And the way I see it is like, hey, more space for new cool things instead of trying to fill it up with old memories.
I love your attitude. I really do. I love the way you're looking at life and everything else. Now let's get into you found ghostwriting.
Yeah,
Ghostwriting is give everybody an idea. I'll let you give them the definition of what ghostwriting actually is
sure.
from your perspective.
Essentially, it's writing for other people, helping other people who either don't have the time or talent. Those are two of the big categories, so I'll stick with those. But people who either don't have the time or don't have the talent to write their own content. Um, I I work mostly through books, but also articles and some email copy. But I help other people write their content. So I don't make up a story and put someone else's name on it. I work with a lot of thought leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of speakers, some celebrities, and I help them tell their story. And people hire me sometimes because they're great speakers, but they just can't or won't write really effectively. Or they hire me because they they own a company, and if they were to take the 200 to 500 hours that it takes to write a good book away from their regular workday, it would cost them millions of dollars worth of lost leads or lost business, or they would have to take it from their family. So there are lots of ways that writers make money. They write their own books and they sell them. They write their own content and sell them. And a lot of ghostwriters do that as well. But they build their network, they build connections, and they make good money to help fuel their own writing by helping other people write their content.
Nice, nice. I've done quite a bit of ghostwriting back in the past, so that's why when I first saw this, in your bio, I was like, "Get out of town." I mean, I've never met anybody else on the show that's done this sort of thing before. But I got to tell you, to the degree that you do it, nowhere close. And all of my stuff was through freelancer, things online and everything else. Now, you don't do the freelancer thing, and you've done all of your business offline. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a listing anywhere.
How?
So I love that question because um, the first thing I did, if you noticed, a little piece of my story is I had this big law firm job. And then when I quit that job, I didn't have another. I was 10 years into my law career. I was up for partner. That the 6 days later, it was I'm sorry, June 7th of 2013. June 1st, I flew back from Tennessee where that conference was. And I thought to myself, hey, if I'm going to make partner, I'm going to I'm up for partner. If it seems easy, I'll wait the 6 months, get the title, and then quit. If it is because it'll serve me in different ways. I can get a better in-house job or a better if I want to come back to the practice of law someday. But then I sat in this meeting and the lawyers were like, all right, this is what making partner looks like, and then this is what life as a partner looks like. And it was just worse. So I quit. And then I called up a friend of mine who I knew in Massachusetts. I didn't tell my wife I had this plan because the second she heard that I was thinking about quitting, she would have had the realtors on the line. It would have just, and I didn't know that I had the ability yet to um come through and still support the family. She stayed home with the kids, still does. So I quit. I called up my only client in Massachusetts and I said, listen, my wife doesn't even know this. I just quit my job. Now they didn't believe me, but because I was a big, firm guy, um, but like I was the head of the commit all these committees and everything like that. So I call up, I said, hey, I just quit my job. I need you to hire me. And this is June of 2013. She's like, I can't hire you. And I was like, yes, you can. I know how much you spend on lawyers. And she's like, no, but I can't. I don't have the budget. And I had anticipated it because when I quit the job, I said, I said, hey, listen, I got to move my family home. Like, what if I just don't go for partner? What happens? And they're like, well, eventually you'll get fired. I was like, all right, how eventually? Or because you just don't stick around. Like you'll get a severance letter at some point if you don't do anything. And they're like, well, sometime in the fall you'll get a severance letter. And I was like, great. So you're telling me unless I do something crazy, I'm going to get paid through the end of the year. They're like, I guess so. That's really not what we're saying, but sure. And so I was like, all right, let's just put a date on it. And I was like, how about the end of March of next year? And they're like, this isn't a negotiation. I'm like, yet here we are. No, so I was like, so eventually they agreed to pay me through the following February. And so that was very intentional because I knew if I were to get a job to where that would allow me more stability, more control, more predictability in my timeline, it needed to be an in-house counsel job. And I knew so where I would be a lawyer for one company. And so just like going in, you're an accountant for Microsoft or whatever. I knew that they set their corporate budgets every year. So they didn't have money to hire someone in June, but I knew they would in January. And so I called up. I said, you don't have to pay me till next year. How cool is that? You haven't set up next year's budget yet, have you? And she's like, we have not. And I said, so here's the deal. I care about four things. I don't want my email on my phone. I know, even in 2013, I know that sounds crazy, but you'll have my cell phone number. If you need me, call me. You know how hard I work. I just need to do this for my family. Number two, I want a set schedule. You tell me the hours. I don't care how many. I don't care. I just need them to be predictable because I'm going to build something on the side and I want to spend time with my family and I want to be able, I don't know what I'm going to be doing because I didn't. I want to be able to uh, make appointments and then show up reliably. And I don't want to work weekends. Same thing. If there's an emergency, just call me. I'll come in. But I want to make plans without worrying. And then, but I don't, in exchange for that, I don't care what you pay me. And she's like, yeah, right. I'm like, no, I don't care what you pay me. Give me a written offer. You're going to give me a written offer to start paying me next year. You're going to put it on paper. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm going to sign it and I'm going to appreciate it. And she's like, I'll see what I can do. And so they did. And I took a $125,000 a year pay cut for that job. I stayed there for 2.5 years. And when I started getting into ghostwriting in the spring, fall, end of the winter, beginning of springish of 2015, I met this lady who was a lawyer turned ghostwriter. And she told me, I had never heard of it. And she had told me all that she does. I was like, how many books can you write? She's like, I could write 10 a year. Like, that sounds cool. How much you get paid for per book? She's like, I get paid about $20,000. So I'm doing math. I'm like, I can take care of the family for that. And I was like, how do you get your clients? And she's like, oh, I'm a member of this listserv where if someone wants a ghostwriter, they should zap out to all the writers. Hey, there's a business book. Who wants to pitch it? And I was like, that I don't like. And so I actually committed to myself, to answer your question 10 minutes later, I actually committed to myself that in order for me to be able to to do this and to quit a job as a lawyer eventually to do something as seemingly silly as betting the family's future on writing, I needed to be able to control how I get clients or at least impact. And so I very intentionally did not go to any of the Fivers or the Upworks. There are some people, very, very few, but some people who make good money doing it. But you're just competing on price. And so all I did was start telling people I'm building a ghostwriter. And it took me a while to get my first client, but I got my first client in December of 2015. I charged way too little. And then I got my next one 3 weeks later, my next one 2 months later. And then I just committed to showing up as if I'm charging 10 times what I charge, no matter what my fee is. I worked on multiple books every time, and I raised my rates until I hit resistance every time, and then raised them again. And and I have never had a gap in work in just about a decade as we're recording this. And it's all from doing a few things. Number one, I call this sort of the invisible marketing machine. Um, I call it the invisible marketing machine, where all you do is have a bunch of simple conversations with people and then serve people so well that they're so successful that all of their friends and family ask them how they did it. And they're going to connect them to me.
Hmm.
And so I wrote books. I wrote multiple books because that way, if something blew up with one person, I still had 3 or 4 or 5 other people. I didn't lose 100% of my income. And I raised my rates every time. So when I replaced that client that dropped out, I replaced them with more money. And so I wouldn't stress about it. And then I've had, and I'm very, very like humbled by this, but I've had more clients hire me for multiple projects than just one project. So the idea is I don't need a lot of clients because I have clients sign up over and over again. So if you think about it, like I aim to serve 10 people and sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's 15, but I aim to serve 10. I'm 46 years old. Let's say I want to write until I'm 76 years old. I only need 300 more clients between now and the time I retire at 76 years old to keep my schedule full. I'm not selling hamburgers. And so I only need 300 and maybe half of them, maybe more are going to be repeat. So I I really only need 100 to have convince quote unquote 150 people between now and the time I die that it's worth investing and working with. So I have simple conversations. I serve people well. I help them become successful early on with their writing. And I plant some seeds, not manipulatively, but I plant some seeds when I start working with people such that I get referrals oftentimes before I even start working with people. They'll be like, hey, you know what? You need to meet this person. They haven't even started working with me. So it's
Wow.
definitely it, yeah, it's definitely a fun route to go to say, hey, listen, I'm gonna intentionally not put my name where everyone looks for writers,
Right.
but it's over the long term, you get paid more. People do it based on relationships. You get more referrals. You don't have to spend a lot of time marketing, and you don't have to spend money marketing or promoting your bio or your profile or whatever. And it generally works out well.
All right. Now, I would never ask you to give away the secret sauce because I know this is something that you do, for a living. But anything that you can tell us, and of course, you reserve the
Yeah.
right to say, "Hey, I can't answer that question." No harm, no foul. But yeah, when people get into this, I mean, everybody gets online, everybody signs up to be a freelancer someplace. You mentioned some of the sites. I did that. I actually was pretty good at it and managed to make a little over $1,000 a week just to keep the lights on and keep things going. But when you start talking about $20,000 for a book, and things
Yeah.
like this, the it's a different level of the stratosphere.
Hmm.
and you're in a different performance algorithm at that point. But I guess this is a thing. You're selling this service, you're having these conversations. The the buyers, the people who are your clients, are these people who first of all, are these people who strictly want you to write a book for them and then they put their name on it? Or are these people who want you to teach them how to write their own book?
Um, it is sort of in the middle. So, um, more towards write them and they put their name on it, but it's their information. So it's not like if it's not like that, hey, I want a leadership book. I literally just got back from Disney as we're recording. We're recording here on Monday. On Friday night at midnight, I was landing in Logan Airport. And I'm working with one of their senior leaders at Walt Disney World. And he's putting my name in his book. And he turns to me and he says, Nick, you really could have written this book without me, which was really, really like cool to hear, of course. Um, but everything in the book, if you read that book when it comes out, it's not a leadership book. It's stories from Disney World. It's stories from like what happened with COVID when they shut down. It's how do you simplify complex initiatives to actually shut down Walt Disney World. He told me it was harder to shut down Walt Disney World than it is to keep it open, because when they keep it open, it's just object in motion, right? But when it's and then all the stories about how they built the NBA bubble when it was when
Yeah.
COVID hit. There's stories about, what did they do when they found a bear one day at in a safe spot, but like, how do they safely remove a bear from Magic Kingdom? And it's just the coolest experience. But so some people think of ghostwriting as Nick just went and wrote a leadership book and threw someone's name on it. But it's really, I teach them the art and science of writing an effective book. And then when I teach them that, I then ask them questions and get the story from them in the context of, hey, this is what a really good book does. It tells stories and then it reflects on those stories. So that way people are learning, but they're learning in an interesting way. It's not just like reading like a white paper. Here's 10 ways to be a better leader. No, it's, hey, on January 15th, 2024,
Mm.
hurricane whatever was rumbling through eastern Florida, heading on its way. And so we're telling that story. And the date's wrong, but there's a hurricane story. And and then he reflects on it. And so it is me teaching them how to write an effective book, but they're not going to write it. I'm going to write it. But I need to teach them how to write an effective book so these really smart people can tell me the story in a way that I can put it into that written form. So that way it becomes an impactful book for readers.
Okay, that's fascinating. So, in terms of your behavior and your interaction with the client, it's almost as though you're operating like an autobiographer.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sitting in the room, and it was funny. This guy remarks, he's like, he and I are having a conversation, and I'm talking like you and I are talking, and then he's telling a story. So when I'm telling parts of my story, my car accident or quitting the job, and the four things I requested from my job, instead of just listening intently, you'd be typing if you were me. And so I'm talking, I'm asking him questions, and we're writing, and I'm typing, and then like literally last week we reserved the one of the conference rooms and mirrored my computer onto two big screen TVs. And as he's typing, I'm just writing the story. I'm turning it into story form in my head and putting it up on the screen. And we get like 2 chapters a day done that way, where it's the first draft, where it's story, and then I would ask him questions. Oh, tell me about that. Why'd you do that? And he'd say, oh, I did that because you need to make sure you do this, this, and this in order for it to be that. And so then I'd be like, here's a story, and then how to make sure you're able to do that. Number one, do this. Number two, do this, right? And so I'm just asking a lot of inquisitive questions. I get into the shoes of the reader and say, hey, so why should I care about this? I run an accounting firm. And and so yeah, I am a bit of an autobiographer, but I also consider myself an advocate on behalf of readers. And so I'm going to ask those curious questions, sort of like you do as a podcast host. You're representing your listeners right now. and you
Right.
know your listeners way better than I could, even though I'm a fan and listen to episodes. You know your listener more than I do. And so it's almost like you're reaching out on behalf of your audience saying, but tell me about this. Oh, so how hard is it to do that? Or whatever's important to your audience. So I do the same thing, but instead of just recording it as a podcast, my end product is a written form.
Wow. The ghostwriting that I did in the past was exactly what you were describing before. Hey, I need a book on, this, say leadership. Okay, and then you write the book. I had a bunch of clients that wanted health and fitness books written, or workout books written, or nutrition, or whatever it was. And it needs to be 10,000 words. It's got to be this long, and blah blah blah. And then you just send it over, and they put their name on
Yeah.
it. Like that's it, So the thing that you do is so much more involved and complex, and
Mm.
and I love it because there's so much more to it. As you're telling me all this, you're sitting there, you're writing, you're typing. This is being filtered through you. You're putting yourself in the seat of the reader. Um, these are all things that AI can't do. So,
Hmm.
do you use AI for any of this stuff, or are you, a dyed-in-the-wool guy like me who's, avoiding that kicking and screaming?
No, I don't use it for writing. And a lot of my clients, so that's what's interesting. So we have AI, and the thing about AI is I like to tell my clients, like they'll ask me, "Hey, what's your fee?" And my fee right now is $75,000, give or take, per book. And they'll say, "Well, is it more for a longer book? Is it less for a shorter book?" And the answer is no. I charge enough to not care how many words it is. I'm not going to let you write a book that's too long or too short because that won't position you for success. And so 40 to 60,000 words is the sweet spot. If we end up at 75, it's not the end of the world. If we end up at 25, it's not the end of the world. But a 25,000 word book is sometimes harder to write because you need to be more succinct and more direct and more interesting with fewer words. So I just charge enough to not care how many words it is. And I don't charge you for the words. I charge for the things that AI can't do. Get in those shoes of people, help connect you with a publisher. So, like, one of the things that really separated me from a lot of ghostwriters, and I now share these with my students who I teach to become ghostwriters, is my clients would ask me at the beginning, well, how do I publish this thing? And at first, I started helping them self publish, but then I built relationships and I built a really good relationship with a publisher that I ended up investing in. And so now I have a direct line and a lot of influence in getting my clients' book published. So all of a sudden, they're interviewing a bunch of writers and they ask one writer, how do I publish this? And they'll say, well, I can send you some information about self-publishing. They ask me, I said, well, I can get you to the pub board of the publisher who did this book and this book and this book. Can't guarantee anything, and I still won't. But if it's the right book, they've never said no. So so I separated myself. And the same thing, how do I get attention to this thing? And I started building those relationships. And so I tell my clients, listen, I charge for the things that AI can't do. The people who I'm worried about are the not mid-tier on the freelancer websites, but the ones who are just like 20 bucks a blog post, I'll do it for you. Because those are the folks, the people who search on those websites often are looking for the lowest price, acceptable quality. And so they're buying words. So the people who are just buying words will go get free words. And especially if they don't super care how well they're written, um, they just want to get the information out there. They're trying to check some boxes. It doesn't really compete yet, and I don't think it will, with what I offer, which is I can get you the connections to the publisher. I can help you. I have a client whose book funnel, I helped connect them with one of my partners who builds book funnels, and then another person who's a good friend of mine who promotes book funnels. And so the idea here is, for those who don't know about funnels, is you put a series of websites together. First one says, do you want my book? $15, including shipping. And then when they say yes, it says, okay, do you want the workbook and do you want the digital downloads? There's another 20 bucks. Sure. And they say, great. I don't know. Because the idea is you don't know where people are in the buying journey. Do they just want the book, or are they going to dive in and they just want whatever you can offer them? So this one client put his book up for $15 on April 22nd of 2025. He had do you want this digital download for 17? Do you want that digital download for 27? And then he had a $300 and a $1,000 upsell. So he had lots of options to meet people wherever they are. And in 1 week, he sold something like 50 books plus a bunch of people bought the $27 digital product, which is all profit. A bunch of people bought the 17, more than a handful bought the $300. And so he generated whatever, several $1,000s in 1 week. AI can't connect them with that. He's more successful because of it. And so the idea is I try to help people in a way that Amazon can't compete with me, not because they can't bully me around for whatever I'm doing, but because they're doing a different service. AI can't compete with me because they're just ideation. And I do use it for ideation. Hey, um, here's 5 titles that we're working on for this book. Give me 10 more. And my clients and I will look there for chapter titles or something like that. But in terms of strategizing the book, I always say, hey, let's begin with the end in mind, work our way backwards. And instead of writing a book that just documents where we've been, let's write a book that gets us where we want to go. So let's dream a little. And then we plan that book and then we'll use it as a spot check there. Hey, what am I missing? But in terms of writing the content, um, I even tell, like, I've told one client, he's like, well, what if we use ChatGPT to do the writing? If I really don't care about the writing, like, that's fine. Same fee, but that's fine. Like, I don't charge for words.
Nice. Same fee.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, make my life easier. You don't care? All right, that's
Yeah.
fine. Same fee.
Yeah.
That's, I love that. I mean, the only justification it seems like for the higher fees is the human element, because otherwise it's like you said, it gets into just a pricing war of
Hmm.
who can give me the cheapest, non-offensive stuff.
Yeah, I had one client tell me, and there's even these spot checks. I had one client say, "Hey, listen, I want to write in my book. It was a health book, and he's like, water. Water's so powerful. Like water can even cure cancer in certain cases." And I was like, "We can't say that, sir." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "We can't. People will completely disregard everything in your book, even if it's true." Because he's like, "Oh, in some cases." He wasn't trying to be this whatever they call quacks or whatever, but I said, "Listen, why don't we look for the instance?" And we found several studies, very reputable studies, where the abstract or the outcome was essentially that people who reported to have consumed 8 glasses of water per day for 20 plus years had a whatever 46% lower instance of colon cancer or something to that effect. But it was a very specific thing. And so he wrote the book and said, water's so great. In fact, there are some studies. There was one study that said this. Now, I'm not telling you it can cure cancer, but water's good for you. AI is not going to tell him not to write that.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, I love it. Now, so one of your businesses is this. It's writing the books for the people who hire you to do this. Another business is teaching people how they can become ghostwriters.
Yes.
Yes. You've got a plethora of other businesses. Do you want to maybe take us down that path and let everybody know kind of how you've blossomed since you walked out of the law firm?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So my first business and the business through which I still support my family is ghostwriting, authority ghostwriting, where I help people write books, articles, some social, well, not social content. I try to avoid social content at all costs, but email content. Um, and then after several years, people started asking me, "Hey, how are you doing it? I'm struggling with writing." So I created Ghostwriter School. So if people go to ghostwriterschool.com, there's a free guide. You'll get some emails from me, and where I essentially teach people how to put me out of business. The forms I use in my ghostwriting business today are in there. The Trello boards to manage projects, to make you look like a pro from day one, where you share your screen, say, "Here's a Trello board. I'm going to duplicate this, make this for you. Our resources go here." It's all there. And then early on, clients were asking me, "How do you publish this thing?" We talked about that a little bit. And so I built a relationship with a publisher called Morgan James Publishing. And for those in the business world, they published the first edition of Brendan Burchard's The Millionaire Messenger,
Mhm.
Jeff Walker's Launch, Russell Brunson's .com Secrets and Expert Secrets, lots of great books. So I built a relationship with them and eventually annoyed them enough and harassed them enough that they let me invest in the company. So now I help run the company. And that was the publishing company that I mentioned. I have also, and all of these things have led from high-end ghostwriting clients asking me how to become more and more successful. And so I essentially consider myself a high-priced problem solver. And so the next problem was, well, how do I market this thing? And so I have Book Funnels HQ. which is it's a software. It's essentially Go high level that's been adapted to help authors. And so there's some standard book funnels in there. There are some, my partner's a tech like guru, and he's created some AI bots to help people get started, where you upload your manuscript and and answer some questions. And it's like, here's all the copy for your book funnel. And here's all the copy. Just edit it and make it yours. But some people will just put it up there. And so when you ask, do I embrace it? I embrace it. I accept it. But it has its purposes. And so I have BookFunnels HQ. Then how do I get the word out? And so I had been friends with the founder of a company called Cutting Edge Events, which runs a bunch of events, including Podfest, which is the world's largest independent podcaster conference.
Yeah.
And I'm now the managing partner and CEO of that company to help people learn how to spread the word. And then in 2023, after being in Morgan James for a while, I started realizing that authors really they're in this tough situation where they want to send people over to Amazon to buy books because it's easy and because Amazon will put them on the bestsellers. They'll get a royalty for the book, but they don't make money off of those sales. Like they might make $5, but you're not getting yourself a customer. You're getting Amazon a customer. And you don't even know who you're getting a reader. You have no idea who they are. And so a lot of authors will build these funnels, whether it's a BookFunnels HQ or some other, their own software. They will build a book funnel. They'll sell books on their website and because they want that customer information and they can make more money by selling those $17 and $27 things. They can follow up with emails, get lifetime customer value. But the problem is those books don't count as bookstore sales, number one. And number two, in order to get one of those live, you need to spend thousands of dollars on inventory of books, pay to ship those books to a warehouse, pay the warehouse $87 a month to store each pallet of books that you have there, and then pay $7.69 every time you make a sale for the book. So you're spending $15, $20 per book, and maybe sometimes $12 per book, depending on how your book is and how many you buy, if you buy a whole bunch. And you need $5,000, $10,000 to get started in buying inventory. But they're going to do that because they want to be able to make their book profitable by selling those upsells. And they want to get that long time customer value. So I started calling bookstore representatives and saying, hey, what if our clients put the same sales process live, but instead of having a whole bunch of books at a warehouse, they just zapped you over shipping information and they paid for you to send this customer a book. And the bookstores were like, you can't do that. And they're like, why? And they're like, the technology isn't there. And they're like, it was all like no payment information is being shared. They're all just buying it there. The only payment information is the author. Rory is paying me to swipe Rory's credit card and ship Nick a book because Nick just bought it. And so it's just shipping information. And they all told me I was crazy, you couldn't do it. And so I just did it. So now I own a bookstore that functions as a drop shipper for people to be able to sell from their funnels.
Okay. So, I mean, so all of this came down to you even said, all right, if you're not going to work with me on this, I know it can be done. I'm going to start a bookstore then to compete with you. And we're going to do it
Yes.
that way.
Yes. And so now, and that's the idea is like, well, can't Amazon just put you out of business? Like Amazon could always put someone out of business if they really wanted to.
Sure.
But the idea here is that what Amazon won't do is give the author the customer information. They want the data. They don't care about the book sales. They want the data, really.
Right.
And so the customer, the real secret sauce here is, yes, it's a bookstore sale. Yes, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars in inventory. You just pay for the books one at a time as you ship them. But the real benefit to the authors is they get the customer and they get the upsells because you don't get the upsells on Amazon. And so Amazon wants the customer information. They're not going to waste their time with something.
That's interesting. So I guess I'm a little curious as to who your customer becomes as you kind of go down the line of these businesses, because like I see who the customer is when you're writing the book for them, when you're teaching other people how to write the book, then obviously those people are your customer. Your as you get into the bookstore and the book funnel, in the book funnel, you're still trying to get the customer, the bookstore then, the advantage to the bookstore is just not having to warehouse it, or also the payment processing. How does the name of the customer come in that
Yes,
connection?
the advantage of the bookstore is the sales all occur on the author's website, not mine. And so the
Ah,
author collects the customer information and then says, hey, you need to ship Nick a book. And so, like, for example, with Freedom Hill Coffee Roasters, as you were doing the intro, I went to shop.com, I got my confirmation number, and it's going to be shipped to me. And then it would be as if Freedom Hill Coffee Roasters called you and said, hey, Rory, I know you can drop ship coffee for me. Can you send his coffee? They then can follow up with me to sell other products and services. And so my customer for all of these is the author. And it's just other ways for the author to become successful.
I see.
And really the ideal author for my bookstore is someone who's a thought leader, a consultant, um, who has digital products, coaching service, where the initial book sale is really only designed to get leads for higher end products or services. And they would be better off, or they would prefer investing the five or $10,000 that they would otherwise spend on inventory in marketing and optimization of their funnels to get more people on the phone for their programs or to consult or something like that. And so it's the bookstore. Yes, it has a little physical location, and ultimately, the idea is once the volume gets up, like right now, we're selling, I don't know, dozens of books over and over and over again. But when it becomes hundreds or thousands of books, because I just opened it and I don't market it, it's just word of mouth. Um, the idea is to open locations all around the United States and then be able to guarantee Morgan James publishing authors you're going to have your books on at least this many bookstore shelves for the first 6 months that your books are out, and we can do book tours. And the idea is for all of these businesses to really support each other and make it so, like at Morgan James, I tell people, I want to make our authors so successful that every publisher wants to work with them, but they never want to leave.
Nice. Nice. Great goal to have. Now let's backtrack for a minute, and I appreciate all that information. Thank you for clarifying that for me. You mentioned Podfest, which a lot of folks who listen to our podcast are also podcasters.
Nice.
You mentioned Podfest, which we all know is like the event for podcasters that's out there. Love that. But you also are a podcaster
Yes,
yourself.
sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you told me you had four podcasts. I
Yeah,
mean,
some of them are more active than others, but yes, I wrote a little baby memoir when I decided to become a ghostwriter. I had no portfolio, I had no experience. I'd written millions of words as a lawyer that were in other people that were designed to have specific voices. Sometimes I was representing the big company. Of course, we didn't do anything wrong, because we're very careful with this. And I was fortunate to never have a case handed to me that I was like, we're representing the bad guy. Um, and maybe that was just luck, but then there were some times where I'd do pro bono work and I'd represent people saying, "Hey, listen, we're getting beat up here. We're the little guy." And so I wrote different tone, different intention, persuasive, for years, but I didn't have any published book. And so when I went down to that coaching program in 2013, as I started on the flight, June 1st of 2013, flying home, I'm taking all these notes because I'm like, I couldn't get that couple out of my mind. How like they were finishing each other's sentences, not interrupt. They were just dancing together, essentially. Just the way they looked at it was just love. And so I just started like tearing myself apart, almost in a negative way, but really more in a personal growth way. All the little things I was screwing up in my relationship, like, just being lazy, just when I get home from work, just sitting on the second my butt hits the couch, that's it. I'm done. Like it just not being intentional. And so I started journaling. And then when I learned a year and a half or so later that ghostwriting was a thing, I'm like, maybe I'll take that little journal and turn it into a baby book about relationships. And so it's only about 25,000 words. It tells my accident story, and it tells all the little things that I was doing wrong in relationships, stories about what they look like and the impact they had. And then I interviewed a bunch of people who had been married 25 plus years. Um, and and I turned that into a book called Confessions of a Terrible Husband: Lessons Learned from a Lumpy Couch. And so I tell a story how like the first time when I got back from Tennessee, I was inspired to change, but I didn't tell my wife I was going to change. You can sense a theme here. And so I I decided I was just going to start doing the little things. And so the next day she was in the bedroom, I'm sitting on the couch and I hear the dishwasher finish. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get up. I'm going to put the dishes away. And so I get up, I put the dishes away. I don't say anything. I don't say, hey, I got the dishes. I didn't tell her I did it after I was on. I just put the dishes away and I sat back down. 20 minutes later, she comes walking. It might have been 2 hours. I don't know. She comes walking out of the bedroom to empty the dishwasher, opens the dishwasher and sees it empty. And the look on her face was not, wow, Nick emptied the dishwasher. What a sweetheart. It was, oh my God, someone broke in our house and only stole the dishes, right? Like the last thing on her mind or like was Nick did this. And so like just these little stories and just reflections like, hey, like just the good energy that came with that. She's like, where are the dishes? And so like, I'm like, they're away. And they weren't all in the right spot because I didn't know where they all went. It's not something you're really proud of, but so so I turned that into this sort of mini, I don't know, 50 episode podcast. And I don't update it very much, but still to this day, like within the last month, I've gotten emails from people who just like, hey, I appreciate you just sort of thinking out loud for us as someone who's not super trained in everything. It was really helpful. And then when I started doing that, my son, who was 4 at the time, 3.5 when he asked, he's like, you're starting a podcast? And I was like, yeah. He's like, what's a podcast? I'm like, it's kind of like a radio show, but on the computer. He's like, can I have one? And I'm like, oh boy. I was like in the middle of, okay, say yes to family stuff. So I was like, sure, buddy, you can have a podcast. And so his sister, my daughter, and I recorded 250 plus episodes of a personal growth podcast for kids called 5 Minutes with Dad. And so it's 5 to 20 minute episodes. We take a story from our lives and reflect on it. Hey, that's leading by example. Did you like, hey, what's this? How do you make money as a kid? Those like little fun things. And we tell jokes and we did that for 10 years or so. And I never pushed it on them, but we've been featured in Parents Magazine, fatherly.com. It was really a really cool. And actually that podcast is what connected me with Chris Kremitzos, who founded Podfest and ended up building a relationship that allowed me to buy in and become managing partner. And then I did one for lawyers called Attorney Marketing Institute, which is a couple dozen maybe episodes on how to market a practice differently. And then the one I do now is originally branded Get Paid to Write, but we'll be rebranding as the Ghostwriter School podcast, where I teach writers how to become ghostwriters.
Wow. All right. Wow. Uh, how do you have time for all this? Seriously, I mean, seriously asking, do you have some sort of like, big, time management system that you're working with, or how do you possibly fit
Um,
all of these different things into the course of a day, especially when you're on site writing a book some of this time, following people around?
yeah,
How do you do it?
it's not perfect, and I have a lot of people who help me. I don't have super like I have systems, but I am not. I have hardcore ADHD, but in a productive way. So if I can just get myself started on something, I'm golden. And so for me, it just get started on something. So the method to my madness is just do 5 minutes. And then once I'm 5 minutes in, I'm good for 3 hours. So there's that. The second thing is if you notice really in all of my businesses, I build my businesses with the mindset of wanting anything I do to impact everything I do. And so the idea is when I am talking with you, I'm talking with you about ghostwriting. Somebody listening to this podcast is going to want to become a ghostwriter. Someone else is going to be listening to this podcast and say, I need a ghostwriter. Someone else is going to be saying, man, I got this book just sitting on the shelf. Can I publish it? Someone else. So the idea is I have one conversation with a little different emphasis, and I'm talking to the same people, helping the same people. And so I have that one mindset, and I have a one sentence business plan that if I help enough people become successful, I never have to worry about my own success. And so there's my students, I even tell them, if you do this, you just serve people well. First of all, you're going to make mistakes. But if you serve people well, they'll be forgiven. Second of all, if you serve people well, you're going to all of a sudden, you're going to be like, out of nowhere, I got this ghostwriting client. No, it's not out of nowhere. It's because you've built a life where you're helping good people achieve good things. And then when that happens, the boomerang always comes back.
That's amazing. I love the attitude. I love the mission statement, the whole nine yards. And just to be able to hit your life like that, um, it has to be gratifying, especially after working 80 plus hours a week, in a New York City law firm.
Yeah, and I pinch myself because I get to live this life. I coach my daughter on two softball teams. I coached my son on basketball, and I know nothing about basketball. But my one rule on practice was I will never shoot the ball. So, like, because they would lose all confidence in their coach if they saw me shoot the ball. I'm a good leadership guy. I'll teach them mindset hacks. My teams were always first or second place and the best defenders in the league, not because I taught them how to shoot a jump shot. It's because, all right, they're 7 years old. Here's the best defense. When the other person has the ball, just put your hand in their face and they won't shoot it. And it worked. Right. So just how do you simplify these complex things? So yeah, I mean, I get to do things where I have a journal of my both of my kids' childhoods, an audio journal. I can listen back to that whenever I want. And that just thinking about it chokes me up. And the fact that I do still work a lot, but I can work whenever, wherever. I don't need to be. I'm in an office. I have a physical office because I like to. But I don't have to be anywhere. I can be. I literally last week walked the entire underground secret tunnel underneath Magic Kingdom. Like it was no photos allowed. I walk into one room, there's Cinderella putting on her makeup. Like it was, there's this entire town down there. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but like the idea is there's like cafeterias. That's where, because you think you never see characters coming and going. What like they all come in from underneath, and there's this really cool like all of the Coca-Cola um, syrups and everything. It's all underneath, going straight up into the restaurants. All the deliveries go through the underground. You never see a delivery truck going down Main Street, USA, in Magic Kingdom. It's like the coolest thing in the world, and the fact that I get to do it by helping people help other people. My kids always joke with me because I say, "Hey," they said, "What do you do for a living?" I say, "I help people help people." And that's what I do. I help authors help read.
That's beautiful. I've never heard that before about the Disney thing. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's confidential. Maybe I'm going to pull that back a little bit. But I
Yeah.
mean that's pretty cool. So and of course that's just from networking with these people that you get to know these
Yeah.
folks.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I can actually and one thing that I would say to encourage the listeners and is one or two investing, whether it's time, money, energy, combination, investing in one or two really deep, impactful relationships can be can pay off for decades to come. That mentor I mentioned, I ended up joining a mastermind group with him. That's where I met the lawyer turned ghostwriter. And I was paying something like $300 a month to be in that mastermind group. There are some, I now pay $2,000 a month for another mastermind group. And to this day, 10 years after I started, I can trace half of my business to that mastermind group. Not because everyone's like, oh, Dan, his name, Dan Miller. He wrote a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love. Um, Dan didn't refer all of these people to me, but I was in that room. He's referred some people to me, but I met people and then I served them well and they met the branches yield back to this one relationship. And so it's all from word of mouth networking, but consistently investing in impactful, growth minded relationships.
Wow. I mean, Nick, what an amazing journey, man, from from how you started our conversation today to this, living your dream life, and being able to do what it is you love in so many different ways. And I love that you didn't just stop with, "Hey, I'm a good ghostwriter. I'm making plenty of money. That's it." You've continued to evolve and take the next step and the next step and the next step. Um, with all of these different things that you've built, what's next?
Well, so my businesses are still very reliant upon my existence. And so I'm I've been really effective at building them to not need my daily impact, all of them, except the ghostwriting. But if something happens to me, my some of the businesses will still run, some of them won't be able to. And so what's next for me is twofold. Number one, I want to make them more Nick resistant and then Nick less Nick reliant. And then I want them to be able to operate better without me. because my family is still reliant on my ability to go out and so what's next for me is the bookstore idea. As people really understand what it can do for them, I just pay for the books one at a time. And then if my average cart value, even if the books cost me 15, $16, my average cart value is $37. And so the math works out that like I'm just going to focus on those things and I get all these benefits. So I have one location and I'm probably about 10% my way to where the sales will need to be in order to open a second location, a third location. And the idea is opening the location to not by renting space, but by buying small commercial property. Because they're all focused on online sales, I don't need them to be the most expensive or the biggest or anything fanciest commercial properties. And so within 5 years, I want to have 12 physical locations with property that I own where online sales are paying for the location. So I can just have those locations really be positively impacting the community. I want to have special needs folks be able to go there and make a good living, earn their work where I'm not even worried about profitability of the stores because I got that handled. And then over time, the online sales are paying down the real estate. So it's a commercial real estate play for me while being able to really positively impact people in the community and authors we serve. And so for me, it's just listening to what people want and being able to serve them and help them make more money, help authors make more money, help thought leaders make more money while Nick proofing my business because my family can benefit from a commercial real estate portfolio way more than without me needing to be there because we can have an easier management. So that's the down and dirty of the vision a little bit. Um, but I am still looking for companies to bring in to serve writers better. I'm talking with another event company, I'm talking with another publishing company. But yeah, just continue to listen to authors, learn what makes them successful, and then try to impact and control it while I nick proof. I do.
Nice. I didn't prepare you for that, but I just knew that you had something else lined up because this just seems to be the kind of guy you are, brother.
Thanks, man.
You can't just sit here on my laurels. I mean, it's got to be a next step. So
Yep.
I like that Nick proofing your own stuff. So
Yeah.
Nick, listen, you've shared so much, and it's a fantastic story. I've enjoyed every minute of it. The I like to kind of wrap things up with this question for folks. I want to give you the floor for a couple minutes. Is there anything I didn't ask you? Is there anything that we talked about? Maybe you want to drive home, a little bit more. Is there a nugget or a piece of advice you want to leave behind for, the husbands and fathers that are listening to this today, who I think probably have a little renewed sense of hope, with everything you're
Mhm.
doing, that they can go out and maybe do some things too. The floor is yours for the last few minutes.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I would say is like when I talk about books and when I talk about what I'm doing, it probably can feel overwhelming. Where I talk about the science of this and having the book there and right, like the way I write books, um, it sounds really complicated and it sounds like there's a lot to it. And like maybe it sounds like just because I'm in it, uh, I'm talking so fast that oh, Nick can do it because he's special. And the truth is twofold. Number one, I'm just as special as everyone listening to this. I'm not saying I'm not special. I am special, but everyone listening to this is special as well. But number two, when I really want to encourage people to get started, whatever it is, maybe it's not ghostwriting, maybe it's something. Look for someone else who's making money just like that and study them a little because you can think of anything. I went to my daughter's um, career fair. She was so excited. She's in eighth grade, and they had eighth grade career fair, 500 eighth graders in our town, and they all bring them into a gym, and it's almost like you're going to a conference where everyone has a booth and you talk about what you do. And I was the only ghostwriter, which might not surprise you, but my daughter was so excited to have me there because what dad does is really cool. And I don't think she would have been as excited if I were a lawyer to bring me there, right? She gets excited. She feels my energy. But a girl comes up to the booth who I knew who played softball in town, and we were talking. She's a great softball player, and we were talking about what she wants to do for a living. And I was like, "Oh, do you want to do something with softball?" And she's like, "Yeah, but you can't make money doing softball." And I thought, you know what? There's no professional softball league that makes a whole bunch of. I get what she's saying, but I said, well, what about Megrem? And that's code word. There's a lady named Megan, and I forget her last name, but it begins with REM. and she's a social media influencer. She's got a big YouTube channel. I guarantee you she's making a whole lot of money. And she plays softball every day because she records herself on video. She does instructions. She does camps. I guarantee you she makes a whole lot of money. And so I just said to her, I said, well, what about Megrem? You think Megrem makes money? And I didn't know that she knew who it was, but I knew she would know. And she's like, yeah, I guess so. And so the idea here is when you say this doesn't make money, how many writers struggle to make money? I was able to build a writing career that bought a publishing company, or most of it, that bought into the largest shareholder at Podfest after 10 years of it being in business, take care of my family. I'm able to open up a bookstore and not worry about profits. Now it's turning profit, but like just invest in those things. I'm not saying I make billions of dollars or anything like that, but the idea here is you can make money doing something if you serve enough people and help enough people become successful. There are people who are making money doing seemingly the craziest things. Number one. Number two, I want to encourage you. You don't have to go from the beginning to the end. I didn't just quit my job as a big lawyer to become a writer. I didn't even know I was going to be a writer. I got a job, even with a significant pay cut, that gave me just enough to pay for my family's lifestyle at the time as a temporary two-step. So protect that golden goose. And it allowed me, that paycheck allowed me to experiment for a while. And then once I found what it is, I still just didn't quit. I worked nights and weekends until it built enough momentum that I was then confident to quit my job. And even then, I didn't have the confidence. I told my mentor till the day he died that a conversation I had with him in July of 2016 gave me that confidence to quit my job. I had been ghostwriting for not even 8 months. And he's like, Nick, you're ready. He's like, I know a whole bunch of ghostwriters. You're like, what you're doing for clients already, you'll be fine. And so I didn't have the confidence, but I say that I borrowed some confidence from him and said, listen, this guy's a career coach. He's been like everything I've heard him say about careers for 2+ years. He's been right. What are the odds that the one thing he's wrong about is me? And so I quit my job. And so the last thing I want to leave readers with is, and then don't overcomplicate things. So you might look at what I do and it's this big web. Like if you really wanted to map it out, probably take you hours to pause and say, okay, he said something about a bookstore. Okay, now he's got a publishing company. What's all that? It's a mess. It's seemingly a mess. But I didn't have it all on day one. I just had one client. And then I had 2 clients. And then I had 3 clients. And I took the next logical step each time with a big vision to try to keep me grounded. You're not trying to build Google 2025 if you want to build something. In 2004, when Google came out, it was just a white page with a box. And it said, click here for the I'm feeling lucky, or click here to search. Protect that golden goose, whatever's taking care of your family. Consider a sidestep. If your job is too busy, there are other jobs. Get a different job. And then build something on the side so you can not take clients out of desperation, but make good decisions and take the long road. And focus on building Google 2004 and finding other people who are making money off of something that inspires you. And anyone can be, quote unquote, special to other people down the road.
Beautiful. Beautiful way to wrap us up today. How do people reach you, Nick, if they want to find out more about your programs, website, Instagram?
Yeah. Instagram is Nick Pavlidis, NickPavlidis. If you want to become a ghostwriter, you can go to ghostwriterschool.com and you can reach out to me through there. Authority Ghostwriting, Nick Pavlidis. Instagram is probably the easiest way to reach out to me. And if you want to become a ghostwriter, Ghostwriter School is relatively easy to remember.
Nice. And we'll have all that in the show notes, of course. Your website and everything else will be in our show notes. So, Nick, ghostwriter, podcaster, business owner, father, husband, entrepreneur, man, thank you for coming on the show today, sharing everything that you have, laying out a roadmap to just continue to do more, be more, trying to prove yourself. It's been inspirational to hear what you had to say today. I just thank you for being on the show, man.
Well, I'm honored. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Folks, and this has been another episode of the Power of Man podcast. And the reason that we bring powerful men like this on here, talking about powerful subjects like this, is because, we want to help you to achieve your goal of protect, provide, lead your family, be a better husband, father, man tomorrow than you are today. And, one of the things that Nick did that I hope everybody takes home with them from this episode is at one point, even when he was, seriously successful, on paper and in every other way, he said, you know what? I'm worth more. My family's worth more. I have value. They have value. And you know what, folks? You do. You're worth it. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.